Bryan Kohberger has a new alibi. He was out driving around looking at the moon and the stars.
Driving around? That's supposed to be a new alibi? Bryan Kohberger's new alibi is that he was driving around. But isn't that the alibi we already had? I'm Lainey Law.
And I'm attorney Andrew Myers.
Andrew, why have our commenters been asking, talk about his alibi, talk about the new alibi? Isn't it just the same alibi that we had?
Nah, there's a little bit of a twist, and there's a little bit of expert, and there's a little bit of ray of sunshine at the end. You know, this really divided our commenters. Some people thought this is really going to help him. Some people thought it was just a bunch of rubbish. We're going to try and play it straight here, but at the very end, as we go through this, you'll see that maybe there really is something here that will help Mr. Coburger. We need to take a dive back to the original alibi, which was back in August of 2023, which basically said, hey, you know, don't push us. We really don't have to do this right now in this way. And so, you know, give us more time, which the court did give Mr. Coburger more time. And his alibi really was that he was out driving around. So here it is. We're going to take a look at it. Like I said, we've got to get a little bit of background. And here's the original alibi. You can see that it's dated August 2nd. And what they said, basically, Idaho Code 19519 and ICR 12.1, that's the rules of criminal procedure there, require an alibi disclosure of a specific location with a specific location and witness to so testify. By statutory definition, Mr. Coburger may remain silent, yet testify that he was not at 1122 King Road, November 13th, 2022. However, in an abundance of caution and recognizing the court, see what he's saying here is that, hey, don't push us. We don't have to tell you anything right now, but in an abundance of caution and recognizing the court has the authority to exclude witnesses, Mr. Coburger has indicated he anticipates corroborating witnesses.
Which could potentially be pretty big if he had a witness, but
yeah,
kind of hard to imply.
So they went through all the law that supports their position, I should say. Mr. Coburger, and this is the heart of what their alibi was initially, Mr. Coburger has long had a habit of going for drives alone. Often he would go for drives at night. He did so late on November 12th and into November 13th of 2022. Mr. Coburger is not claiming to be at a specific, oh, look at this. And remember this 2 minutes from now, Mr. Coburger is not claiming to be at a specific location at a specific time. At this time, there is not a specific witness to say precisely where Mr. Coburger was at each moment of the hours between late night November 12th and early morning November 13th. He was out driving during the late night and early morning hours of November 12th to 13th, 2022.
That reminds me of one of our comments that was like, gas must be so cheap in the United States if you can afford to be driving out at night at that, which some people we talked about too like driving at night. But to say, like, I don't know where I was at any time is a little, like, just burning gas for 3 hours, 4 hours is a little.
Well, I don't know. Corroboration of Bryan Kohberger not being at 1122 King may be brought out through expert witness presentation. So the bottom line here in this August of 2023 Alibi 1.0 was Mr. Kohberger was out driving alone. Well, all right. So I remember we talked about this, and I actually talked to someone in that area who said, yeah, that's a thing. That's something that the college kids do. Because, you know, if you stay in the dorm or the apartment, there's a lot of people making noise, and maybe there's odors that you don't like to smell. And so, all right. Okay. Alibi number 2 comes along. This is red flag number 4. So this comes along. April of 2024. And it's a little bit more specific. Remember how it said that we didn't really know where he was, or we don't have to say anything specific? Mm-hmm. Well, look at this. Not only is he out observing the night sky, he likes to look at the moon and the stars. And we have an expert that's going to corroborate all this. And he was at a park by the name of Wawawai Park.
Mm-hmm. Which I get a little bit to some degree. I've definitely been out and just like driven to a park or just a parking lot and hung out at that place when you don't have anything to do. I haven't done it recently, but I remember being younger and just wanting to get out of the house.
Were you doing it in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
Okay. So now here is the new. This is the news. This is the new Alibi that has just come out. April 17th of 2024. Everybody's paid their taxes, so now they can get around to writing new briefs. And this is the latest brief by Mr. Coburger's attorneys. And it says, let me see if I can get this straightened out so we can all read it. There, can you read that now? Mr. Coburger moved to Pullman, Washington in June of 2022. As an avid runner and hiker, he explored many areas of the Palouse. Of note, he explored Wawawai Park in July of 2022, and this became a favorite location. After the school year began, Mr. Coburger was busy with classes and work at Washington State University, and his running and hiking decreased but did not stop. I don't know, when I was in college, I remember being able to run after classes. We would all get together in the dorm and run up and down the Charles. I mean, I don't know. But
I can't say one way or another. I'm not particularly athletic, but I have not been to the gym in over a week because it's finals. So I'll give him a little bit of credit on that part. When I get stressed, I don't like to add to that, but I don't know, because he's still driving around, so it's not like he's using less time to run.
Well, okay, according to this, the supplemental response to the state's alibi demand, in the final line here, instead his nighttime drives increased. This is supported by data from Mr. Coburger's phone showing him in the countryside late at night and or early in the morning on several occasions. The phone data includes numerous photographs taken on several different late evenings and early mornings, including in November, depicting the night sky. Wait a minute. Where's the data? Where's the phone? We know that they seized his phone. So where's this data? Isn't that a question?
This is silly. This is not what it is. But my mind just goes to please let that 52 terabytes just be for whatever reason, hour-long videos of him staring at the night sky, because I can't imagine going through that content otherwise.
I wouldn't bet the coffee money on that one. I really would not.
Praying for Ann Taylor.
I don't know.
Here's 52 terabytes. It's like the 52 terabytes in question. It's just the sky.
I don't know, but here it says right here that he has numerous photographs taken on several different late evenings and early mornings, including in November, depicting the night sky. Mr. Coburger was out driving in the early morning hours of November 13th, as he often did, to hike and run and or see the moon and stars. He drove throughout the area south of Pullman, Washington, west of Moscow, Idaho, including Wawawai Park. So what they're saying here is that he did not drive over to Moscow, Idaho. He drove in the other direction towards Wawawai Park, which is in Washington State. Now, drum roll, please. Partial corroboration. Mr. Coburger intends to offer testimony of Cy Ray, a CSLI expert, cell tower, cell phone, and other radio frequency, and his curriculum video is attached to show that Bryan Kohberger's mobile device was south of Pullman, Washington, and west of Moscow, Idaho on November 13th, 2022. That Bryan Kohberger's mobile device did not travel east on the Moscow-Pullman Highway in the early morning hours of November 13th, and thus could not be the vehicle captured on video along the Moscow-Pullman Highway. near Floyd's cannabis shop. I think that's the first we've heard about Floyd's cannabis shop.
Mhm.
But do you remember the PCA, the probable cause affidavit? And there's also some video. I mean, people always tell us in the comments what we always know. Didn't you see so-and-so's video of the Hyundai Elantra on Lindell Lane? Yeah, we've seen it, but it's so blurry, it could be my Toyota RAV. But anyhow, I digress. Additional information as to Mr. Coburger's whereabouts as the early morning hours progressed, including additional analysis by Mr. Ray, will be provided once the state provides discovery requested and now subject to an upcoming motion to compel. If not disclosed, Mr. Ray's testimony will also reveal that critical exculpatory evidence further corroborating Mr. Kohberger's alibi was either not preserved or has been withheld.
It's a strong statement right there.
Well, that's why we put it in red. And it's kind of, I don't know if it's a threat or a statement that, these photographs that Mr. Kohberger took of the moon and the stars, they don't have them. They're on his cell phone, which was seized way back in December of 2022. So I don't know. On the one hand, they're saying it's exculpatory, and on the other hand, they're saying that it would be exculpatory evidence, but it's either not been preserved by the state or it's been withheld, or maybe they're implying, and that's why we put the little red asterisks there, maybe they've destroyed it. I don't know. And this is the little gem I said that we get to, because if that's true, that would be big. If in fact they had Mr. Kohberger's phone and it did have these photographs of the stars and the moon, and if they were date stamped, that would be exculpatory. But aren't most photographs that you take on your cell phone date stamped?
That's what I was thinking. This is kind of giving me a little bit of chills, because the not preserved or has been withheld part and saying that there's evidence that can be proven makes me think of a lot of different things. And I'm wondering, I'm gonna assume that nothing sketchy has happened, but one of the first things that my mind went to is, what kind of phone did he have? Did he have an iPhone? Did he have an Android? Because I believe with the iPhone, a lot of the times you take a picture and by default it's saved to the cloud without people realizing. So it'd be interesting to me if there was like a photo that was deleted on his phone, but it was found in the iCloud, and that's why you can have the expert confirm that the phone was this place and this time. I agree with you that the metadata usually has the timestamps and sometimes often the location, unless you go out of your way to turn that off. So I'm curious to see what they could have possibly found. The way that everything is being phrased right here makes it seem, it's very strong statements that make it seem very cut and dry. And I feel like they wouldn't be saying this stuff if they weren't ready to back it up.
Now, when you get a new camera, you set it yourself. At least I haven't bought a new camera for so long. Maybe things have changed. But when you buy a new camera, you yourself put the day and the week and the month and, what time zone you're in and all that stuff. But that would not be true of a cell phone.
No, with the phones, a lot of the time, it's just getting the information like we talked about from the cell phone towers. So it already has the date. It's like when daylight savings time happens, your phone automatically goes back. And even with the location data, a lot of people don't even realize when they're agreeing to things, and they don't even realize a lot of the permissions that the phone has. So your phone could be telling you where that photo was taken very precisely. Like that's one of the things that we'll do is we'll like look and see the map, and you can actually go on the map on your phone and it'll tell you what locations you've taken pictures at and when those pictures were taken. So,
well, I wonder if Ann Taylor, Mr. Kohberger's attorney, is playing truth or dare with this, because what if what she's seeming to say is she's almost baiting the prosecution into admitting that they did something with it and they didn't provide it as they must. If it's exculpatory evidence, they've absolutely positively got to turn it over. But from what you're saying, what if they turn it over and there are no pictures of that night? Then what?
Well, that's what I'm wondering is if the way that she's phrasing it, like you said, is just like, are the pictures not there? And is it on an iCloud somewhere that can be proven? Did something get deleted? Did they just pass by the fact that maybe there was a photo of this guy at a certain location at like 4:15? Did they just see that and not consider it significant and pass by that? It could be that these photos are still there, but that there could have been photos taken that weren't how we've had our 500,000 discovery cases. Maybe that's some of the stuff that we're missing.
Don't know. And then the mystery deepens even more if you go on to the website of this park, Wawaii County Park. Do you see the sign where it says Wawaii County Park? Maybe I need to make it bigger so you can see it a little bit better. See that? It says Wawaii County Park. And then behind that, there's a gate. And my understanding is that at 7 o'clock at night, they close that gate. So if you start out driving around in the middle of the night and you're going to Wawaii Park and the gate's closed, you're not getting in unless, look, there's rocks all over. You can't go by the rocks on the right or the fence on the left. So,
and maybe this could be a little bit part of why he has been having a hard time, why he doesn't say one way or another, because maybe there's some guilt of having been trespassing at a park. I mean, it's a little bit weird in my opinion, just because I used to go to parks when they were closed, but that was also, early 20s behavior. That's you just got a card behavior. Maybe I don't know what it's like to be a single guy in your late 20s, and maybe he's still doing the same things. Maybe he's just bored, lonely, parking at a park. I don't know if there's a lake there or anything. Maybe that's just one of his favorite hangout spots. I mean, if you park in the area and you walk over, nobody's really checking to see that nobody hopped over the gate. So,
well, I suppose you're right, but you're really making me scratch my head, which is going to bring us to red flag number 3. Here's the night that they say in Alibi 2.0 that Mr. Coburger was out, taking pictures of and appreciating the night sky. Weather conditions in Pullman, Washington on November 13th, 2022. That day, the high temperature was 32. The low temperature was 28. Okay, you can sit in your car burning gas. But it was overcast. Now, how do you see the moon if it's overcast?
The overcast out of everything there, I would say, is one of the more, I don't want to say like damning parts, but questionable parts. I can't really say what the sky looked like on that day. We talked about how maybe he's in the car burning gas. I mean, I know some people might run at 32 degrees, but from what we've been given, we can assume that he wasn't running at the time. Yeah, I don't know what that sky is going to look like. Like you said, it's overcast. I mean, I'm not even someone that goes star watching. So
this is the weather conditions in Pullman, Washington on November 13th. It says overcast. Mm-hmm. You're not seeing the moon or any stars if it's overcast. Yeah. And even more, come on now. If you want to see the moon, don't you want to see the moon according to the lunar phase index and all this stuff? You can corroborate yourself because it's all, these days everything's online and all this stuff is verifiable online. There's actually a site called lunarphase.org. And according to that, the lunar phase on November 13th was a waning crescent moon. And it was at 3.49% illumination, kind of looking like that crescent in the photograph on the right. And, again, I'll enlarge it so you can get a better look at it. I mean, come on. If you really like looking at the moon, don't you want to see the moon and not like a little teeny crescent?
I'm not a moon girly. I'm not an astrology girly, but I will say anytime at night when you're driving and I see the moon, no matter how big or tiny it is, I give it a little bit of love. I don't know people who are into the skies like that, but it sounds like even just the visibility was not there. So while I'm not going to say a waning crescent is going to make the difference, like you said, overcast, cloudy, there's a chance we weren't seeing it.
Oh, I don't know. All right, we're just reporting it. We're just trying to be as objective as possible. But this, again, I'm scratching my head, and now I'm going to red flag number 2. And who is this alibi expert? There's an expert that says that he can crack into all this information and prove that Mr. Coburger has a valid alibi. His name is Cy Ray.
I will say, with the name like Cy Ray, you kind of sound like you're gonna have a blockbuster discovery.
Oh,
it's not John Robertson there. We got a fancy named expert over here.
So here he is. He has 20 years of law enforcement experience. He has 10 years of expert witness case consulting experience. He's testified over 100 times in the state and federal court. He had a company by the name of ZX Company and Software.
ZX. Now, that's my only red flag here. It's like testified over 100 times state and federal court, 10 years expert witness. That all sounds really good. When you put an X in your company name, that's a little bit of a red flag for me personally. What is that company? I've never heard of it.
We skipped over his curriculum vitae, so let's go back. Okay, we skipped over Mr. Cy Ray's curriculum vitae, which was attached to the Alibi 2.0 document that we looked at before. There's the ZX that you love. And here is his background. Look at that. 20 years of law enforcement experience, 5 years of patrol operations, 10 years of expert witness case consultant experience with your favorite ZX. He's testified over 100 times in state and federal courts. This is something that raised my eyebrows a little bit. It said all casework prior to 11/23 was as a prosecution witness. And now here he is, being the expert for the defense. So I said, why would he have done 10 years of expert witness, testifying over 100 years, only for the prosecution, and now he switches over? So I went out on our friend the internet, and look what I found. He had a little bit of a problem in Colorado in 2022. The Colorado judge found a sea of unreliability in the company's cell phone mapping data. And this is an article from the Denver Gazette. And there's the judge, Judge Juan Villasenor. You think I said that right?
I would say so.
Police.
Villasenor.
What's that?
Villasenor.
Villasenor.
Yeah.
Okay. Police and prosecutors in Colorado and throughout the nation are relying on a company's cell phone location mapping data to help them convict criminal defendants. But a Laramar County judge's recent ruling casts doubt on the technology when he barred its use in his courtroom after finding it unreliable and prone to error. So here's our friend, Mr. Ray, who for many years has been a prosecution witness, and he has this software in this company that helps prosecutors lock people up with cell phone location mapping data, which is a hot science right now, right? Mm-hmm. The judge did not take aim at all cell phone mapping data, because this is a big area for prosecutors to get into right now. It's widely used by law enforcement. Rather, his ruling was limited to tracks mapping software from Chandler, Arizona-based ZX, which produces aerial maps prosecutors and police use to estimate the location of a defendant's cell phone during an alleged crime. And that would be really important in any crime, but especially in this Coburger case, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. In some, tracks and its methods have been routinely and sharply admonished by the scientific and legal community, and the people haven't directed the court to any evidence showing otherwise. Cy Ray, and again, this is the expert that has now joined the Coburger defense, Cy Ray, a former sergeant in the Gilbert Police Department in Arizona, claims the maps produced by the Trax software he created are 94 to 96% accurate. So I would say that on its face, without cross-examination that's effective, I would say that's beyond reasonable doubt right there. But Mr. Foof said police and prosecutors find ZX's maps particularly compelling because they reduce ambiguity for a jury and allow law enforcement to dramatically reduce the area where they estimate a cell phone was located. Villasenora found that Ray, who did not return telephone messages seeking comment for this article, was not a credible witness. Quote, he inflated his credentials, inaccurately claiming to be an engineer, the judge wrote in his ruling, stressing that Ray had testified that he is more of an engineer than an engineer. What? Huh? What?
He reminds me of this person that I knew that I used to work with who really wanted to be a software developer, which is also considered a software engineer, who was really into technology, but hadn't had school and hadn't had a formal education, which it's still possible to become a software engineer without formal education, but it's a little ballsy to say you're more of an engineer than people who went to a 4-year college to be engineers. So while you can develop tech and be considered a software engineer, a big part of engineering, and maybe I'll want to hear what our viewers think, you can agree or disagree, but a lot of it is, learning the math and learning how to think a certain way. So he had that crime mindset if he was working in law enforcement, which I'm sure could be helpful, but it's a bold statement to make.
But don't you need a license to be an engineer? I mean, in the states that I'm familiar with, being Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, you need a license to be an engineer, no?
Not with the software engineering. There's so many different types of engineering, but if you're like a computer engineer, for example, I don't think you need any type of license for that. I think that with technology, it's kind of a new space that's setting up. But just because you made a software that's doing some mapping doesn't make it better or worse, All
right. But back to this particular case, I mean, as noted, his sole academic degree is an associate's, and there's no evidence that it's related to engineering, nor is there evidence that Ray's taken any engineering classes, the judge continued. To be sure, he's created a booming business and has successfully pitched Trax to several law enforcement agencies, but a sound business model doesn't equal an accurate error rate. So, we get back to taking a look at the Coburger alibi, and he now has an expert who, had worked for a prosecution for the state as an expert witness for years and years and years and years and years. Then his evidence is banned from a courtroom in Colorado, so now he switches side of the. I don't know. I don't know any more than I'm seeing in the motions that are filed in court and in the research that we did, but I don't know. When I go to look for an expert in a case, which I do, I generally look for an expert that's won some cases, an expert that the judges and juries like.
Not one that has their software banned.
I have actually, called other attorneys through my associations. I have 2 state associations and a national association, and I'll call another attorney and say, hey, do you know of an expert that is good to work with that can help us with X, Y, or Z? And they'll tell me, yeah, sure. Why don't you try so-and-so? I used her several times previously with just exactly the type of an issue that you have. I recommend you give her a call. So, you vet these people out. Mm-hmm. It's true. There are big books. There's a big book we get every year. It started out that big, but now it's about that big, of experts, and you can open up the book and it's got fine print. There's experts on everything. There are experts on, all kinds of products. There are experts on pressure gauges. There are experts on anything and everything. But generally speaking, you do want to vet your expert. And so I don't know. But now let's go to our final red flag. Red flag number 1. Red flag number 1 might actually, at the bottom of all of this, after we get through all of this, this might actually help Mr. Coburger. Now, if in fact what he's saying is true, if in fact Mr. Coburger remembers that on the night of November 13th of 2022, he was in fact at Wawawi Park, or anywhere really that isn't within the circle that's kind of drawn if you follow the probable cause affidavit, if he was somewhere else, and if the data on the phone will prove that, he might have something there. And people will say down in the comments, well, he turned his phone off, or he put it on airplane mode. What about that? Well, phones still, and you can do your research on this, it's out there. Phones still track you, even if they're off or if they're on airplane mode. They save that data. Then when you turn the phone back on and you go into an app, boom, that goes back out. So that, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that even if he had turned his phone off, where he had been is still going to be in there.
Potentially. I'm not too certain about all of that, but it would make sense that if the phone had battery, that it could theoretically be using some of that to have some type of tracking. I'm not too certain on the science behind it, but I'm not going to disqualify that as a possibility.
So if Mr. Coburger is that certain in his memory that that's where he was that night and he remembers that night, and if this expert says that this data that would taken at face value, if all of this is true, it's very exculpatory if he wasn't anywhere near that home, if he wasn't anywhere near 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho on November 13th of 2022. That's a big thing. And so if the state, and I think this is what they're alleging in that last line that we read of Alibi 2.0, if the state, got his phone and downloaded all that information and they know that and they're withholding it, that's a problem for the state. That's major exculpatory evidence. And if they've hidden it or withheld it and locked it down or destroyed it, even worse, that's a big problem for the state. We wonder what happened to it because there have been multiple discovery requests. If multiple discovery requests and motions to compel have been filed, and this actually does exist, that's a problem for the state. So I guess my final thought on all this is it really, divides us. There are people that say this is just a bunch of junk. I've seen the comments since this came out. I've seen the comments. This is junk. This is nothing. If he was out, driving around that night, why did it take, a year and a half for this to come out? And it's just a bunch of rubbish. On the other hand, people are saying, listen, if this is legit, if his cell phone would have exculpatory evidence within it, and if the state is not, disclosing that, that's a big problem. So it divides us. It depends on how you look at the case. But, there's the expert, and they finally have an expert in what he will do and how he will, work on this case, and whether it flavors the case one way or the other remains to be seen.
I think that the way that they're packaging it makes it sound like this is going to be huge. Like you said, if they have exculpatory evidence, I think, it's very bold for them to be saying it like this. And I want to believe that it's true, but, we have some credibility questions with this person. But we also don't know, is he going to be using the TrackX to prove that he's innocent? It could be even totally other stuff that he talks about. So we don't know right now, but I also think it's going to be very concerning if it gets to the point where the case comes and we get to the point where we're talking about this exculpatory evidence on his phone, where if it turns out that theoretically he had a picture or a video or something going on during the time of the murders and he is proven innocent from that, that is going to be really crazy on all Idaho, because then you're thinking about it's like, okay, well, this person we've had locked up for so long, we just spent so many resources on this whole court case, and he has very easy way to prove his innocence, where's the actual killer then? I think that, she's packaging this up as if it's going to be big, but if it's not as big as she's playing it up to be, it's going to be a huge problem, because
could be.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, it's a new development in the case, and like other things, like last episode we had the Coburger's cat episode with the Garrett discovery. It's one of those things that either it's big or it's not big. We've had some additional thoughts, which we'll talk about in another episode. But it's another Coburger's cat. Mm-hmm. It could either be something or it could be nothing. And we don't know enough about what is on the phone. We don't know enough about what has been requested. We don't know enough about the things that the state is really holding back on. I mean, why? Why have there been so many motions to compel, and why has there been so many requests for discovery? All that stuff's been sealed and, kept secret and redacted. So, again, the truth will come out, and I think sooner rather than later. But, so that's it. Thank you, folks. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for hanging with us. As always, we ask you to be polite and kind and respectful. If you're in the grocery store, or if you're in the parking garage or a big box store, you don't know what the other guy is going through. And, in our comments, we ask you to keep that in mind. We do encourage any and all comments. It's just that you can't slander people, and you can't, tell us that we're wrong. I mean, we like it if you have a different view. And if you read through our comments, boy, oh boy, there are people that think we're wrong. But be polite and respectful. If you're going to say, what kind of a lawyer are you if you think, and then fill in the
No, we do definitely appreciate all the feedback you guys give us, and I'm really curious to see what you guys have to say about this, because this is interesting.
Okay, so hope you all have a great week.
Thank you guys for watching.
You have been watching About the Law, a production of the law offices of Andrew D. Myers in Methuen in the Merrimack Valley of Massachusetts, and in Derry, just outside of Manchester, New Hampshire. Remember to click the like and subscribe buttons down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to share it with your friends and others. If you'd like to talk to me about an injury case, a car accident, a slip and fall, a serious bodily injury case, or some other case, please feel free to contact me. I'd love to talk to you. You can contact us through my website at attorney-myers.com. We have a contact us block, or you can call on one of the telephone numbers we've given there, or you can email me at andrew@attorney-myers.com. The foregoing is offered for informational purposes only. It is not intended as and does not constitute legal advice. Laws vary widely from state to state. You should rely only on the advice given to you during a personal consultation by a local attorney thoroughly familiar with state laws and the area of practice in which your concern lies. This podcast must be and hereby is labeled advertisement in some jurisdictions.
And that's that.
No tunnels.
I heard there was a tunnel that went out to Wawa Park.
Maybe there's a tunnel that has exculpatory evidence.
I think there was a tunnel that went out there. And you know what else they have in the park is horses.
Oh, maybe. Maybe that's what he was looking. Maybe that's what he was taking pictures of. Not of the moon, but maybe of the horses.
Living horses. There were living horses.
Are photos of horses exculpatory evidence?
Actually, out west, there's a lot more horses out west than there are here on the East Coast, aren't there? Aren't horses a big thing out there?
They got a lot of space out there. It would make some sense if he was taking some pictures of some horses.
I don't know. But driving around at night.
I'm concerned that there is a picture of a horse, because if there is, people are never going to get over this.
No, especially if there's tunnels.